Hi everyone, welcome back to our videos. Today we were hoping to take you along to the inspiration for today's video, which is a black shed with a nice red roof down in Rye Harbour, but unfortunately roadworks got in the way of all that because they have shut the pathway. So we've had to do it from afar. That little speck in the distance is what we're trying to create today. Wayne, go with the zoom. And to create it, we are going to be using all natural ingredients, some activated charcoal, red clay, indigo powder, and some yellow clay. I'm hoping you can hear me okay because it is pretty windy here at the moment, so I'm going to try and keep this brief just in case the wind noise is overtaking everything. But that is basically what we're doing. We're creating one of our favourite little spots down in Rye Harbour, the old red roof shed. So let's jump in and get making that soap. So today's first step is going to be adding our cooled lye water into our melted oils. Then we're going to bring it to a very, very light trace just past emulsion. And then we are going to split off 280 grams, which is going to form our first layer, which is going to be the sand. And to create our sand, we are using French yellow clay, about 1 teaspoon, mixed with half a teaspoon of walnut shell. It'd be great to be able to use real sand, but with the soaps that are being assessed for sale, you can't use real sand. But walnut shell, I've found, makes a really convincing replacement. So we're going to get all of this into here, then we're going to bring it to a nice thick trace and get it into the base of our mould. So we've got a nice thick trace on the yellow now, so we're going to bring in our mould and we're going to fill it up. We want this to go about 1/4 of the way up. So we're just going to give it a little bit of a shake and a tap, making sure that the air bubbles can come out and that all the corners are filled with the soap, because we don't want any kind of bubbles or gaps when it's done. And now we're just going to leave this until it's firm enough for us to add our embed and do our second layer. While we're doing that, I will show you the embeds that I've got. I made these little houses a few days ago. They're not perfect. It was my very first attempt and I actually didn't film myself making them because I was so convinced that it wasn't going to work that I decided there was no point setting up the camera. But actually they have come out all right, and so we're going to use them. It was basically activated charcoal for the black, white kaolin clay for the door and the windows, and it was red Moroccan clay mixed with a little bit of rose clay. No, it wasn't, mixed with a little bit of madder powder to create the red roof. And then I just used some scraper tools to cut out the shape that I wanted and used a knife to form the shape on the roof. So these are the embeds we're going to be working with today. So while we're waiting for that layer to set up, we shall go about colouring these three. I have split off 100 grams of batter into each of these, and this is going to form basically the plants that you see, or the plants that you see when you do this walk down by the harbour. There's a lot of sea plants, there's a little bit of flowering plant, I don't know what plant it is, but it's a lovely purple colour, so we're going to try and incorporate that as well. We are going to use, this one here is some indigo powder and some spirulina powder. It's 1/4 teaspoon of indigo and a 1/2 teaspoon of spirulina. Hopefully it's going to give us a nice bluey green colour, because down on the coast a lot of these plants do have a slight blue tinge to them as well. It's not just green, so I'm hoping that we can incorporate that kind of blue-green colour into this one here. And for the next colour, we're going to go with half a teaspoon of nettle powder and a quarter of a teaspoon of French yellow clay. This is just to give some differentiation between the plants and the colours, because although there's some with blue tinges, there are also some with greeny yellow tinges, and we want to be able to kind of incorporate all of those colours into this soap so that it doesn't end up being too one-dimensional. Wayne has just looked up on the internet for me, and we believe that the purple flowers I just referenced could possibly be, what did you say, marsh hollyhocks?
Marshlox, purple marshlox.
Purple marshlox. So they are potentially the plants that I'm talking about. I love gardening and I love plants, but I couldn't tell you the name of the plants we see down on the marsh, but they're really pretty. And they're purple, which is a beautiful colour to try and incorporate into this soap as well. So win-win situation. So to try and create the purple effect, we have gone with half a teaspoon of purple Brazilian clay. It perhaps isn't going to be as vibrant as the actual flowers are, but it's kind of the closest natural colourant that I've got on hand to be able to use to try and create the purple flowers. So we're going to get all of this in here, and then by then we should be ready to add our embeds to that soap we've put to one side, because it should have firmed up nicely by now. There we go, so that's our colour palette for our next layer. We have got the bluey greeny colour, we have got the yellowy greeny colour, and we have got the purpley purple colour. I will possibly thicken them a little with a stick blender, depending on how much they've thickened up by themselves while we're doing this next layer. So here we are, back to the soap, and now we want to add the little house embeds. I'm going to use this end first, because this is the end that was at the edge of the mould. The designs at the edge of the mould, they never seem to come out nicely. It's always the stuff in the middle that comes out better. So this side is going to be right up to the edge, and I'm just going to push it in here and then press it down gently. And the soap's thickened up quite nicely. Perhaps, if I'm being honest, slightly too much. But with a little bit of pressure, we can get them to sink into the sand enough so that they hopefully shouldn't fall apart when it comes to cutting. There we go. Let's get that last one pressed down. That's better. Into position. Obviously I haven't cut completely straight, so we have got a little gap there, which is slightly annoying, but hopefully you won't notice it too much when the soap is cut. Right, now back to our other colours. And these are still fairly thin, but to be honest, the design I'm going for, I think it's going to help if they're a little bit thinner, because what I'm trying to do is get down into these gaps and kind of crisscrossing each separate colour, just a little like that. And I've got such a small area, I'm just literally dotting it through, trying to mix those colours up as we go. I mean, I'm not explaining that very well at all, but hopefully you'll see what I mean as I do it. So we're going to switch to the other green now, and I'm just going over the top, just kind of crisscrossing over the top. And then onto the other side, which is tougher because it's a lot narrower. So I'm literally just dropping it in bit by bit here. Then we go with a little of the purple. And down the other side. And I'm going to continue like this just until I've got probably half a centimetre to a centimetre's worth of colour. Off now, because I think we're getting more than enough colour depth here. I'm pretty happy with how it's going. Hopefully it will be a reminiscent of this marsh. This little house is down in Rye Harbour, which is a location that we love to go to. It's just nice for a walk. You get to see the wildlife, get to see loads of different plants and things, and this little house is kind of just one of the points that we stop at. You know, you stop, you take your picture. It's recognisable. If anybody who knows Rye will most probably know of this little house, which is why we're trying to encapsulate it in soap form. We now need to leave this to firm up. We're going to pop it to the side. It's going to take a little bit longer because that batter was thinner, but while it's firming up we shall get the next layer, which is going to be our final layer already, and that's going to be the sky. I'm also just going to clean up this bit here where I've gone over the edges. So for our last layer, we've got all the remaining batter in here. We don't need to weigh it, it's just everything that is left over. And we are colouring it. It's going to be a bright blue sky. We are using 1/8 of a teaspoon of indigo powder, 1/8 of a teaspoon of indigo dye, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of white kaolin clay. And I think I forgot to say earlier, but all of these clays and powders have been mixed in with 2 teaspoons of the liquid oil. And that is the liquid oil that is used to make the soap. It's been taken out of our pre-weighed oils. It's not additional oil. So we're going to get all of this into here. We're going to use the stick blender to bring it to a trace. It's already pretty thick, but the kaolin clay and the indigo powder do benefit, I've found, from a little bit of a stick blend, just to get them to go in nice and smoothly and evenly without flecks of undissolved powder left behind. So as you can see, although we only used a tiny amount of all of those colours, 1/8 of a teaspoon, it has actually given us a really nice pale blue colour that I think is going to work really nicely for our sky. There is the odd sort of undissolved fleck of indigo dye that I can see in there, but it's a fine line between getting it to dissolve and having it too thick to actually be able to pour nicely. So I'm happy with how it's looking, and if we get the odd undissolved speck, then that's not going to be a major issue. So let's pull back in the mould. And all that we need to do now is cover our design in the blue sky. And it's pretty thick, the layers that we've already poured, so I'm not worried about them breaking through, so I'm just going to carefully pour this over the top. I'm going to do about half of it, then I'm going to stop and give it a little tap down to hopefully get it into all of those gaps and crevices. And I can see on this side where we've got the narrower gap, it's not going in there so well, so I'm going to just sort of spoon some of this in and then work it in with the spatula. Just doing it this way to try and minimise any air bubbles that we might otherwise get. So that's had a fairly firm tap down now, so I'm fairly confident we're not going to end up with many air bubbles in that, so we're just going to go ahead and pour the remainder of the soap on top and then smooth it out, and that will be this design completed. And I don't think the top of this one needs any real fancy patterns, so all I'm going to do is just drag the spatula back and forth or up and down across the soap to just sort of level it out a bit and make the top nice and smooth. And that is our little Rye Harbour beach soap, all ready to be popped to one side for 24 or 48 hours and then unmoulded and cut. The cutting's always a fun bit. Can't wait to see how this one turns out. So we are back and we have cut our little Rye Harbour inspired soap, and let me show you how it has turned out. Ta-da! Go for the zoom, Wayne, go for the zoom. Okay, perfect zoom. I'm really happy with these ones. I think the little house has come out really pretty. The sands work nicely, and down here where we've got the greenery, for future batches I'd probably make this only about half the height that it is at the minute because I think it's just a little too tall. I'd probably halve that down. But other than that, really happy. I think we've got a really pretty little soap, and I think from the original building that we showed you, you can tell what it's meant to be. So yeah, very happy with today's soap. Thank you for watching as always. Please feel free to leave your comments and questions in the box below. The recipe for this will be in the description box. Feel free to have a little look. Take the recipe, have a play with it yourself. Follow us on Instagram and whatnot. Links are in the description. Subscribe if you want to. If you don't want to subscribe, then just don't subscribe. It's that easy. Check out our website as well, which is here. Purchase something if anything takes your fancy, and if you do, make sure you use our discount code, which is here. Next week we will be moving on from the scenery soaps. We shall be moving on to something else. I think we've done 4 scenery soaps now, so that's probably enough for one go. So we'll move on to something a little bit different next week. And I think that's all. Enjoy your Friday, people. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of your month and your year as well. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.